Hey guys, OG Albina here, bringing you guys another Scarlet and Violet guide video. Today we are going to be looking into how to use Roaring Moon, which is going to be basically the past Paradox version of Salamence. Those of you who don't know, Salamence is my absolute favorite Pokemon, as per it being like the mascot of the channel, so I'm really excited to talk about this one. It's by far my favorite Pokemon of the generation, so we had to get it out of the way first after we did the starters. If you guys do enjoy these types of guide videos, and you do enjoy this one in particular, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as sub to the channel. We are on our way to 2,000 subs, and we're getting pretty darn close. We've been growing pretty quickly, so I really appreciate it if you help set along that journey. And yeah, with that being said, let me know in the comments what you want to see next. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, Roaring Moon, we're going to jump into its stats first. It is a Dark and Dragon type with obviously the ability Photosynthesis, which basically gives it a boost to its highest stat in the sun. And we did just learn that it's a 1.3 to anything besides speed, and it's 1.5 if it's speed. It's rocking out with a stat spread of 105 HP, 139 attack, 71 defense, 55 special attack, 101 speed def, and 119 speed. Now, there's a pretty interesting stat spread because if you look at it, it looks way more powerful than regular Salamence, which is true. It is just objectively stronger than Salamence. Salamence has a base 135 attack stat, so it's a little bit stronger in that regards. It's much faster. Salamence is only base 100, whereas Roaring Moon is base 119. It's a little bit less bulky, but really actually not all that much. It has a higher HP stat and a higher speed def stat. It just has a lower defense stat, but really it's kind of made up for in the base HP. It's missing out on Intimidate, and the real downside to it is going to be it's not a very strong special attacker like Mence can be, so that's really the only downside. But you wouldn't know that this thing actually has a base stat total less than Salamence, only at 590 opposed to 600, so it's really optimized to kind of perform incredibly well, in particular being a strong and fast physical attacker with plenty of options to boot. So that's obviously going to be very fun to kind of talk about. This thing isn't going to be as versatile as something like Mence, but it's going to be very good at what it does. Dark and Dragon is a great stab combination. It does kind of struggle with fairies, but there are plenty of ways around that, and we'll kind of talk about that here with our first set, which is going to be just kidding, we're going to talk about the moves. We're going to talk about some offensive moves that it gets. It gets access to Crunch, Dragon Claw, Earthquake, and Outrage. Crunch, Declaw, and Outrage are all just solid stab options. You can also go Throat Chop if you're scared like a Sylveon, I suppose, which is more of a draft thing in my opinion, or like Jaw Lock, but Crunch is typically better in the base 80 Dark Powered sphere because you do have that opportunity to drop defense by a stage, which can be really, really clutch in a lot of instances, putting things in range of a Dragon Claw, an Earthquake, or an Iron Head, which we'll talk about a little later on. Dragon Claw is a little bit weaker of a stab option, but it isn't something debilitating like Outrage that locks you in. But if there is no fairy or there is no dragon resist left, outrages off of this thing are going to be incredibly, incredibly powerful. Earthquake is great on any physically offensive dragon, hitting those steel types that want to switch in on our dragon stab very, very well. It's something like Crunch isn't going to be doing the job. So that's obviously great coverage, and Earthquake's just a very strong, easily spammable move as well. So, you know, we'll always take that. It also has access to Acrobatics, which isn't a move that I typically talk about, but it is on one of the prevalent sets in OU right now, and I'll kind of talk about that here in a second. It also has access to Fire Fang. Maybe you're in a draft league and you're playing something that's levitating off the ground, but you need to hit super effectively. I don't know, maybe like a Corviknight or something like that. Iron Head is a phenomenal option to hit fairy types very, very hard, especially obviously when your dual stabs are resisted, so I feel like this thing will be using Iron Head very, very often. It also has access to U-turn, which is an incredible tool for it, kind of changing it from being that like one-trick DD sweeper, just like 4-attack spawn, to being a very solid pivot and getting in and out, having good solid natural bulk as well, which you can take advantage of with these different moves right here. Dragon Dance to obviously set up and win the game. That's going to be this thing's bread and butter. It also has a very fast taunt though, which is always, always valuable. And then also Roost for reliable recovery. Again, Roost is nerfed this generation, only having a max of 8 PP, but it's still very nice on DD sets, especially, again, in something like a draft league setting where you're going to be DDing up and maybe you only need 2 coverage moves or something like that in the matchup, but you don't have to cover a whole metagame. You can kind of get away with that a little bit freer. It's also one of the only Pokemon in the game with Scale Shot. Now, I don't think Scale Shot is particularly great on this thing just because it's not the strongest move in the world. It's very unreliable, at least when it comes to its strength. It has the potential to be very strong. But I really do think that a lot of times, like Declaw or Outrage is probably going to be your best bet for Dragon Step. If this guy got Swords Dance, that would be a different story. SD Scale Shot would be incredible. But it only has DD right now, so DDing and Scale Shotting just doesn't seem like the best idea. If anything, if you want the 2 speed boosts, you're better off just DDing twice. But again, it really depends on the instance, and what you're playing against. Our first set right here is going to be kind of a standard set in OU right now, my personal favorite set right now, which is going to be a booster energy variant. Photosynthesis as the ability, obviously. We're just physically offensive with a Jolly Nature. We're Crunch, Earthquake, Iron Head, and Dragon Dance. Our Terra typing on this guy would be a Steel type. The reason that Terra typing is so incredible is because not only is Dark Dragon Steel very solid offensively, coverage-wise, or defensively, Dark, Earthquake, and Iron Head is also going to be great, but we can really bait in those fairy types that want to come in and revenge us with a Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, Spirit Break if you're a Iron Valiant or something of the sorts, though that thing will probably click close combat on you. You can tear into a Steel type, not only get a stab boost on your Iron Head, but also resist Fairy, which is really nice. And then we still have our stab boost on our Crunch and Earthquakes, and Pure Steel is an incredible defensive typing. So even if it's not to like bait a Fairy move, oftentimes I really feel like it's really beneficial to be able to tear into that Steel type and gain those great natural resistances and find that opportunity to DD up and win the game. So I really think that's a really awesome aspect of Roaring Moon here. The what do you call it? Terra Steel, idea of it. Now, item, I went Booster Energy. You can really do a lot of things. You could do Life Orb, you could do Leftover, you could do Heavy Duty Boots, you could do a ton of different things. I think Booster Energy is very solid though. Getting an instant +1 to your attack is always going to be very beneficial, especially when we're just Dragon Dancing and not like Swords Dancing. You're going to sweep through teams so quickly if you get up that Dragon Dance. So I think that's a really awesome aspect of it. Next up, we have a very similar set, which is going to be, again, Booster Energy, just physically offensive with Photosynthesis, Crunch, Earthquake, Acrobatics, and Dragon Dance. This is going to be a Terra Flying set. I have been seeing this run around as the sheer power of like a +2 stab Acrobatics with no item is really immense. You get up that Dragon Dance, your Booster Energy is consumed, you're at +2, and not much resists Acrobatics plus Earthquake, and then you have the Crunch stab as well to throw off. So this set can be really overwhelming offensively. I think that Steel is a little bit better defensively and finding more setup opportunities and really being able to bait things in that would typically beat you. But Flying is nice. It also takes away your fighting weakness though, so that's another aspect to kind of keep in mind, is you do lose that fighting weakness, allowing you to set up on things. Something like a Breloom that's somewhat prevalent in OU right now might really struggle with a Terra Flying Roaring Moon as it tries to, acrobat or mock punch it to revenge it, and it Terra Flyings and just rips through it with an acro. So this set is definitely pretty darn cool. We also have a Choice Band variant. Now, I don't think that this is going to be super prevalent, but again, especially in a draft setting, which I'm talking about draft a lot. I know a lot of people here just for general knowledge, but I play a lot of draft leagues, so my mind goes there often. I think a Choice Band variant could be really cool, and I'd want to tinker with this in the OU tier. Now, you could be Terra Steel in this, Terra Dark, Terra Ground, even to get really strong EQs. Regardless, I think this is a pretty cool set. Really just allowing yourself to come in and get that immediate power boost that you get from a booster drive, but throughout the course of the game. I know Booster Energy is a really cool item and giving that instant +1, but Choice Band is giving you that +1 the whole game. And not only that, do you have that +1 the whole game, you also have U-turn to position the rest of your teammates really well. And there's a lot of things that really appreciate the things that come in to check Roaring Moon, appreciate getting it on for free. So I think that could be a really cool aspect of it, which we'll kind of talk about next. Again, this is much more niche of a set. I would love to see someone try out a Choice Band Roaring Moon. I think it would be really cool. Maybe I'll try and build a team with it and do a Showdown Live or a Wi-Fi battle with it or something like that. But let me know if you guys have any ideas, because I really do think this set could pop off and really do really well. Oop. So from here, we can kind of talk about prevalent teammates. First up, any offensive dark type is really going to appreciate a good offensive fighting. The first one that comes to mind for me is going to be Great Tusk, which is really going to rip through teams. One, it'll put pressure on fairies trying to check it, which they really don't, because ground plus fighting is such an incredible stab combination. You rip every single steel type in the game, so that's going to be really nice. You can rapid spin and get away hazards, and you're just generally a strong Pokemon. I have absolutely loved using Great Tusk plus Roaring Mane in the on the OU ladder. They've been an incredible pairing. Great Tusk has been phenomenal in so many different teams that I've been using, and it definitely pairs well with Roaring Moon here. Next up, I have a good fairy type. Being able to check opposing dragons is obviously going to be very important, and Azumarill is great at doing so. It's also a phenomenal fighting resist. I'm actually a big Azumarill fan right now. I absolutely love this thing defensively and offensively in the tier right now. With so many strong fighting and dragon and dark types that were introduced this generation, I think like EV Azumarill is an absolute demon right now, and it really complements this Roaring Moon well, as well as checking opposing Roaring Moons, which is always going to be a good thing and always going to be a nice thing. You also resist ice for the Roaring Moon, which is again great. You resist fighting, and you're going to be a very solid pick for the team. You're a water that doesn't resist steel, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's really not the biggest deal in the world, and can kind of be mitigated in other areas, especially in such an offensive metagame, which I definitely think is pretty cool. Next up, we have Iron Valiant, which is a little bit more offensive of a pairing of a fairy, and it's also a Pokemon that is a fighting type as well. So you get that fairy fighting stab, so you get that great offensive coverage. You get a little bit of defensive utility as well, but this thing really isn't the bulkiest in the world. So I really like these two together offensively. I think they can really break through and wear down and annoy each other's checks, which can be great. Now, the big issue with these three right here, not necessarily Azumarill, but things like the Iron Valiant and the Great Tusk, is they don't appreciate fairies. It's not that they can't beat them. Really, after a Swords Dance on Iron Valiant or just being offensive on Great Tusk, you can 2-hit KO most of them. But regardless, none of these Pokemon appreciate fairies, right? They don't switch into them well, things like that. So I do have a Pokemon that I do think could be pretty incredible with Roaring Moon, in Iron Moth, being a fire and poison type, quad resisting that fairy, which is great, really breaking through them with Sludge Wave, breaking through steals with its fire moves. It can run a booster energy set itself, and agility and sweep. It can run a boots variant. It can just Morning Sun and get reliable recovery. It can sub up on things and really be a nuisance in that sense. So I actually like Iron Moth a lot. I think it's a really cool Pokemon, and I think it's a really good pairing for Roaring Moon here. But yeah, that's going to be our initial guide on Roaring Moon. Let me know if you think I forgot anything, if you would pair a different Pokemon with it, and what you want to see next in the comments below. And yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the next one. Later.